Hi everyone, it's James here from Production Expert, back with part 2 of my Universal Audio Apollo X recording experience type thing. In this part, we're going to look at the mix. Now, I'm not going to dive into every single track, kind of pointless. You will see that towards the end of this series, but for now, we're going to concentrate on looking at how I treated the buses. That's the drum bus, the guitar buses, the vocals. Rather than looking at the individual tracks, we're going to look at the buses and see how I tend to treat those first before I dive into individual tracks. So with that, over to Pro Tools. So here we are over in Pro Tools, and let's dive into this thing. The first things that happen in this track are the acoustic guitar and the vocals. Have a listen to that.
Struck in disbelief, time passing me. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
What we're going to do in this particular sort of mix breakdown is look at the buses, because that's where I've done most of the work. Yes, there are some channel strips and there are some sort of EQs and things going on the individual channels, but the buses is where it's really going on. So if we just have a listen to that acoustic guitar, or those doubled acoustic guitars as it is. Now, in this case, I ended up using the microphones on their own. I didn't use the DI, which we actually captured at the demo session. It just wasn't working, didn't sound as nice as I was hoping it might. So let's have a listen to that. So let's bypass the effects on that bus and let's have a listen to the tracks naked. Let's bring in some Neve 1073 EQ. Not a lot going on there, a little bit push and pull here and there, but nothing drastic. Now, I love the Neve 33609 for acoustic guitars, for vocals, for all sorts of things, master bus. But in this case, I'm just tapping it. I'm just kissing the needles. And we're finishing it off with a bit of Studer A800 tape. So now when the strum part comes in, we hit the tape a little bit harder, but not so much that you're really noticing any sort of tape saturation or overdrive. So let's have a look at the drums that kick in verse 2. So to give this a kind of cohesive kit feel, I've gone for the Neve 88RS console emulation across all the drum mics, across all 14 drum mics, 13 in actual case, because I didn't use the first tom, so I took it out of the loop because I thought it was pointless it being there. When we get to the end, I'll play the whole track back and let you see the individual effects on each channel. But you can also see that we've got some Oxford EQ going on, and this is purely surgical to kind of get rid of that kind of honkiness out of the kick drum and to give a little push at about 60 hertz to give it some weight. And I think I'm pretty sure that I'm using the same settings for all 3 kick mics, kick in, kick out, and the sub. Now again, on the bus, this is where things get interesting. We've got the 33609 and the A800 again. I'll turn them off to start with and then bring them in. We really are just tickling the needles on this one on the 33609. I don't want it to push. It's just there for flavour and for kind of tonality. It's not there for massive amounts of compression. Now, the bass was recorded direct via a DI box, so I need to get some amp emulation on there, and I'm going to use the Ampeg SVT VR, the classic kind of big 70s retro bass sound. Now, the bass I was playing was a modern sounding Yamaha, so I want to give it some character and some kind of vibe, which is why I've chosen this amp. Into the LA2A, and again into the Studio A800. Again, I'm using the A800 on the buses only. I could apply it across every single channel, but that's just, for me, overcomplicating things. Use it on the buses, and it's going to give you that kind of glue, that kind of saturation, that kind of magic tapeness thing without having to apply it across every single channel. I'll bypass them and then bring them in one by one on the bass part. Now, I am using the Studio here to grind up that kind of bass and give me a little bit more overdrive, a bit more saturation, because I want a little bit of grit. A little bit of grit in that bass sound is really going to help it out, I think. So moving on to the electric guitars, of which there are many. The blue ones are pretty much Paul's, the green ones are mine, and then we have a guitar bus. Now, there's not much going on in those guitar parts. Processing wise, I'm using a bit of Oxford EQ to basically get rid of all the bottom end that I don't want, roll off the bottom end. I just don't need it. And then at the bus stage, we hit the distressor and again the Studio A800. So let me solo those up and I'll bypass the plugins so you can hear exactly what's going on the guitar master bus. One of my big things is I like to commit the sound I want to tape. I'm not going to mess with it later on. So that's why we put all the effects, processing on them. Let's add the distressor. And the studio. So let's play back the entire rhythm track minus the vocals so you can hear exactly what's going on. That's all starting to sit really nicely. Now, one of the things I didn't mention was the reverb processing that I've got going on. I have the EMT 140, which is being used as my drum plate, and that's being affected by the individual drum tracks. So I have sends to the drum plate from the individual drum channels. The drum room, which I'm using the Ocean Way Studios emulation, is only coming from the drum bus, because my theory is the drums in the room are going to excite the room in the same way, pretty much. So I'm using the mix of the drums to go into the Ocean Way plugin, and it's really, really nice just to get that kind of space. If I solo up the drums, and we play that back, that's too much. Take the plate out. There we go. Again, it's all about making life easy. The drums are in the same room. Why not use the drum bus to feed your kind of room tone emulation? We're using the capital chambers for the acoustic guitar because it just sounds amazing. We're also using capital chambers for the vocal, which we'll have a look at now. It's a pretty straightforward setup. I'm using the Fairchild 670 on... It's hardly doing any work. It's there for tone. We're then using the TLA 100 for a little bit more compression type leveling. Mag EQ4. And again, the Studer to give it that kind of tape, glue, saturation-y type thing. I'll bypass those and bring them in one at a time.
Life's just a school. I'm broken by the rules. It won't be the first and it won't be the last time. But in this equation, time and my frustration equals me believing I'm a fool. I cannot see the lightning. I'm headed for the trees. Oh, stormy weather. It took your time to get here and make a fine example out of me.
So we're using the Fairchild 670 to give us a little bit of control, a bit more control, and a bit more level from the TLA 100. The tone is coming from the Marg, and we're just getting that kind of warmth, saturation-y type kind of vibe out of the A800. Put it all together, and this is what we get.
Life's just a school. I'm broken by the rules. It won't be the first and it won't be the last time. But in this equation, time and my frustration.
So I hope you enjoyed that. In the next video, we're going to look at the master bus, the mastering process, if you like. But for now, my name's James Ivey, and I'll see you again very soon for some more gear talk.